Now, I do want to bring in Tal Heinrich, Israeli government spokesperson, a friend of the show here, to talk about the latest information that we do have on the war itself. Now, Tal, first off, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Of course, my pleasure, Josh.
Now, first off, I do want to talk here about the 14 Israeli soldiers we have learned were killed in combat this weekend while fighting in Gaza. Can you tell me a little bit about Netanyahu and the government's response here? Because I know that Netanyahu did speak at a meeting and started off by addressing the topic of those 14 soldiers who did lose their lives in combat.
It's a very difficult time for us as a nation. The Prime Minister said in the beginning of the meeting today that he sends his condolences and the government sends its condolences to the families of these soldiers. This hits home to all of us, basically. Everyone in Israel knows someone who is serving right now to defend us in the north, in the south, as part of the mandatory IDF service or reserve service. It's a national effort. So one way or another, we are all affected by this. And of course, it's devastating to the families of these soldiers, and we are hugging them at this very difficult moment. But we must continue to fight. What choice do we have? We will continue until we achieve the goals that we have defined for this war that Hamas has dragged us into. We will eliminate the Hamas terrorist regime. We will bring back all hostages home, and we will make sure that Gaza will no longer pose a terror threat to us again. This war, again, it's taking a very heavy toll, but we must continue.
And I want to take a look at this video that was released by the IDF yesterday, and it does show the killing here of the man they describe as being responsible for the supply and production of weapons for Hamas. What is the importance and significance of taking out a person like that?
So as we progress, and you also reported this, we eliminated thousands of Hamas terrorists, and among them some top commanders, like in this case that you're now showing the viewers. This took place over the weekend, targeted precision assassination in Rafah. And the person you're talking about, his name is Hassan Atrash. He was responsible for the trade, the production, the equipping of Hamas's military wing. As part of this role, he also worked to bring ammunition to Hamas, smuggle weapons rather from different countries to Hamas in Gaza, but also smuggle weapons to Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank internationally. So, and in that respect, I want to tell you something, not about specifically about this person, but something that came up in an interrogation of a different Hamas commander that we arrested. We brought him to an interrogation in Israel, and he admitted something awful, that Hamas are exploiting children, by the way, by making them transfer weapons, which is, of course, outrageous.
And I want to talk about President Biden speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu this weekend. What can you tell me about their conversation? Because reports indicated that Biden may have talked Netanyahu out of carrying out a strike on Hezbollah, but that Biden specifically did not ask for a ceasefire of any kind amid the war.
Well, that report that pertains to Lebanon is false. You see, Israel is a sovereign country. We make our own military decision. We shape our own military strategy based on the needs on the ground, based on what our leadership decides, if it's the government or the IDF's top brass. We do consult with our best friends in Washington, of course. We take advice also from U.S. armed forces based on your experience. For example, in Mosul, in Fallujah, with all due respect, we want to do better. And but there's no daylight between Washington and Jerusalem. And I think I told you this before in what pertains to the goals of this war. President Biden understands that Israel, it is essential that Israel will eliminate the Hamas terrorist regime. And the Prime Minister has reiterated this during their conversation yesterday. And this will take time.
What is the Israeli government response to essentially that UN Security Council vote that did say that more aid needs to be brought into Gaza? Many people have called it kind of a watered down resolution because it is not calling for a ceasefire by any means, and the U.S. abstained from voting, as did Russia. What is the Israeli government response there?
So first, it is outrageous that up until this point, the UN Security Council hasn't issued any kind of condemnation against Hamas and the atrocities that were committed on October 7th. We're still waiting for this to happen. You know, a resolution that Israelis would want to see is one that calls for the unconditional surrender of Hamas and that all hostages will be freed immediately. And you see, this specific resolution, you're right, it was watered down. And for that, we are very thankful to our friends in Washington. It is very, very important because a ceasefire that leaves Hamas in power with the capabilities, with the desire to perpetrate anything on the scope and brutality of October 7th again and again, that's simply unacceptable. It is a sustainable ceasefire, so to say. That was the language in one of the previous drafts, is simply unacceptable. One that also leaves the hostages, by the way, in Gaza. So in what pertains to the humanitarian aid aspect of the draft, of the resolution that has passed, rather, I can tell you that Israel is already doing that. We have placed no restrictions on the amount of humanitarian aid, like food, water supplies, medical supplies that are allowed to enter Gaza daily. And we are facilitating that. More so, we are able to inspect more trucks, double or even triple the amount of trucks coming into the Gaza Strip daily. And the backlog is not Israel, so to say. It's international agencies, UN agencies that have to keep up with our pace. What's important in this resolution that passed is that it leaves the authority to inspect these trucks in the hands of Israel for a very simple reason, Josh. We do not trust anyone else to inspect these trucks and make sure that ammunition is not reaching Hamas through it.
It sounds as though at this point that Israel is open to another temporary ceasefire, not a permanent one, but that doesn't seem to be good enough, I guess, for Hamas.
Well, you know, when you reported this, we've done this before. We said that we will deliver a humanitarian aid in exchange for the release of hostages. We already had such an outline in place for 7 days. That's how we saw the release of some of the hostages, but 129 are still being held captive for more than 2 months now. And we're hearing horrendous accounts from the hostages who were released. Now, Hamas, as you know, they broke the agreement. They failed to deliver another group of hostages that were due to be released, and they also started opening fire at our forces. So we said, and we continue to say it, that we would agree to a similar outline, a humanitarian pause in the fighting in exchange for the release of hostages.
And Hamas has previously said that they don't know exactly where all of these hostages are located. What is the Israeli government thought on that, the statement here? Do you necessarily believe that Hamas does not know where all of the hostages that remain are?
First, we don't believe Hamas, period. They're a terrorist organization that committed the atrocities on October 7th and burned entire families alive. How can you believe terrorists? But in regard to the hostages, you know, we hold Hamas responsible to their fate. Hamas are responsible to all hostages.
All right, Tal Heinrich there with the Israeli government. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us here. Is there anything else you want to add before I let you go?
Thank you for having me on, Josh. Merry Christmas to you and to all of Israel's supporters in the United States.
Merry Christmas. Thank you again for taking the time to be here.
Thank you.